Have you ever sat in the quiet darkness of your room, tears tracing familiar paths down your cheeks, wondering if anyone sees you? If anyone hears the silent prayers whispered between heartbeats? There's something profound about those moments when the world feels empty, when friends have grown distant, when even your own family seems like strangers passing through your story. You've reached that place where human comfort feels hollow, where advice sounds like echoes bouncing off walls that don't understand your pain. But what if I told you that this exact moment, this feeling of having absolutely no one, is not abandonment at all? What if the very isolation that feels like punishment is actually the sacred space where your greatest breakthrough begins? You thought God forgot you, but maybe silence isn't absence. Maybe it's preparation. The nights stretch longer when you're carrying weight that others can't see. You've tried explaining the ache in your chest, the way hope feels like a muscle that's been overused and now throbs with every beat of your heart. People offer quick fixes and surface solutions, but their words bounce off the depth of what you're experiencing. They mean well, but they can't reach the place where your soul is wrestling with questions that have no easy answers. You find yourself staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m, wondering if this is what being forgotten feels like. If this is what it means to slip through the cracks of divine attention. The world keeps spinning around you, full of people who seem to have their prayers answered quickly, their paths cleared effortlessly. You watch from the sidelines of your own life, wondering what makes their stories different from yours. Why do some doors open while others remain stubbornly sealed? Why do some hearts find their missing pieces while yours continues to search in the echoes of empty rooms? The comparison becomes a weight you carry, adding heaviness to steps that already feel uncertain. Would you still trust divine timing if it meant waiting longer than you hoped? If it meant walking through valleys that seem to have no visible end? There's something about reaching the bottom that strips away everything unnecessary. When you have no one to lean on, no voice to guide you except the whisper that comes from within, you discover strength you never knew existed. The isolation that felt like exile becomes the classroom where you learn who you are when all the noise fades away. Sometimes the greatest gift wrapped in the most painful package is solitude. Not the chosen kind that feels peaceful and restorative, but the kind that arrives uninvited and stays longer than you'd like. The kind that teaches you to sit with your own thoughts without running toward distraction. In these sacred spaces of aloneness, something mysterious begins to happen. The frantic searching quiets into patient waiting. The desperate grasping transforms into open hands that know how to receive. Maybe that's why it's been taking so long. Because heaven's been building your heart first. Think about a tree that grows strong in windy places. Its roots dig deeper not because it wants to, but because it must. The constant pressure teaches it to anchor itself in ways that trees in calm meadows never learn. Your isolation has been the wind that forces your roots to search for water sources others never need to find. You've learned to draw strength from places that run deeper than surface conversations and temporary comfort. There's something profound about discovering that you can survive your own company, that you can sit with your thoughts, your fears, your dreams, and not need immediate rescue from the intensity of it all. This isn't about becoming self-sufficient in a way that shuts others out. It's about becoming whole in a way that doesn't break when others let you down. It's about finding that steady place within yourself that doesn't depend on external validation to know its worth. Our minds crave quick answers, immediate relief, clear directions that make sense of complicated circumstances. But faith teaches us something different. It teaches us to sit with questions until peace becomes the answer, to trust processes we can't see and timing we can't control, to believe that what feels like delay might actually be divine precision, working in ways our limited perspective can't comprehend. Maybe it was never about finding the right person to complete you. Maybe it was about becoming someone who could stand complete in her own story. Someone who could recognize genuine connection because she'd learned to distinguish between desperation and authentic love. Maybe it was never about having all the doors open at once, but about developing the wisdom to know which doors were worth walking through. The heart that's been refined in solitude recognizes counterfeits more easily. It's not quick to settle for less than authentic. because it's learned the difference between being alone and being lonely. Being alone becomes a choice, a space you can inhabit peacefully. Being lonely becomes something you carry inside, regardless of how many people surround you. The woman who's learned to find peace in her own company doesn't enter relationships from emptiness, but from overflow. This season of having no one but the divine presence within you isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of a chapter you couldn't have written from any other place. The strength you're building in secret will serve you in public ways you can't imagine yet. The conversations you're having with heaven in the quiet hours are shaping you into someone who can handle the weight of answered prayers. When breakthrough arrives, it often looks different than we imagined. You expected fireworks, dramatic revelations, obvious signs that your season of waiting was finally over. But divine intervention whispers more than it shouts. It moves through ordinary moments with extraordinary purpose. The woman who's learned to find her strength in sacred solitude begins to notice things others miss. Synchronicities that feel too meaningful to dismiss. Conversations that carry weight beyond their words. Opportunities that arrive dressed as everyday encounters. Your breakthrough doesn't announce itself with trumpets. It arrives quietly, like dawn breaking over mountains you've been climbing in darkness. One morning you wake up and realize the heaviness that lived in your chest has lifted. The questions that kept you awake at night have transformed into a peaceful knowing that some mysteries don't need solving. They just need trusting. The woman who once begged for quick answers now moves with the confidence of someone who's learned that divine timing is always precise, even when it feels delayed. There's a moment when everything shifts, not because your circumstances suddenly align perfectly, but because you align perfectly with your circumstances. The job that didn't come through led you to discover talents you never knew existed. The relationship that ended taught you to recognize love that's built on substance rather than chemistry. The door that stayed closed protected you from paths that would have taken you away from your true calling. You begin to see patterns where once you only saw chaos. The thread of purpose woven through experiences that felt random and painful. The way isolation taught you to listen to your own voice. The way disappointment refined your ability to distinguish between what you thought you wanted and what your soul actually needed. The way silence became the space where you learned to hear divine guidance above the noise of human opinion. The woman who emerges from seasons of having no one but God carries a different kind of strength. Not the brittle kind that breaks under pressure, but the flexible kind that bends without snapping. She's learned that being alone and being abandoned are completely different experiences. One is temporary circumstance, the other is permanent identity. And identity rooted in divine love doesn't shift with changing relationships or circumstances. Maybe that's why the waiting felt so long, because you needed time to develop roots that could support the weight of answered prayers. Dreams have their own seasons, their own timing that rarely matches our impatience. But when the right season arrives, everything moves with surprising speed. Doors that were locked for years suddenly swing open effortlessly. Connections that seemed impossible begin to form naturally. Resources that were scarce become abundant through channels you never expected. One day you'll look back and realize the silence wasn't empty. It was the sound of your roots growing deeper. If this message reached you at the right time, take it as a quiet sign. Your waiting isn't wasted. You're being prepared for something sacred. Write AMEN in the comments if you receive this with faith.